Hello everybody and welcome to a new keynote presentation, this time by yours truly. Radu Palamariu is my name. You know me already by now because you've seen me all over this summit as a moderator and as an MC. I will be very pleased to share with you in the next segment a couple of thoughts in terms of what makes a great and top supply chain talent. Now, as you may know, at Alcott Global, the company that I'm representing, we do a few things, and one of the things that we do is executive search for end-to-end supply chain, right? So we deal with manufacturing companies, we deal with transport logistics companies, e-commerce companies, platforms, across a multitude of roles, end-to-end supply chain as well as executive positions. Pretty much anything that makes things or moves things, we are there in terms of helping around talent, around executives, around people that can transform businesses. So I will be sharing a couple of characteristics that we have observed, both from our own observations as well as from what our clients require us in terms of when they ask us to find the good candidate for them. There are a couple of commonalities that make what we call a top supply chain talent. Very specifically, I will be speaking to you about 3 hard skills, 3 soft skills, plus 1 fundamental skill that I do believe actually that we all should have. So I do hope that I caught your attention. So let's go into the actual sharing. So first and foremost, the first 3 technical or hard skills that would, in our opinion, would be extremely important and relevant to have for anybody that wants to consider themselves a top talent in supply chain. And again, this can be no matter the seniority, right? It can be executive level, it can be mid-level. Obviously, if you just started, you might want to acquire these skills. Number 1 skill, analytical and data related skills. As many of you know, data is the new oil. So we've heard it. The highest valuated companies in the world tend to be driven by data. Amazon or Alibaba know what you're going to buy, what we're going to buy, even before we know that we're going to buy it, because of the power of data and harnessing that. And more, if not all companies, no matter their segments, are going into that. So it's a crucial hard skill now to have. Now, does it mean that all of us will be data scientists? And does it mean that all of us need to be experts in this? No. As the data suggests, and I'm sharing here actually this study done by IBM, specifically for data scientists and analytics and different degrees of and different jobs within the space, there's a demand that's growing almost 10 to 15% year on year in terms of the overall number of jobs. But when I say that a top talent needs to have these skills, I don't mean that you need to be an expert, but I do mean that you need to have some exposure and you need to make sense of data, right? So you might not need to be an expert yourself, you might have an expert in your team, but you need to have basic analytics and almost data science type of skill sets to be able to make sense of the world that we live in now and in the next many, many years in supply chain. Number 2 on the hard skills, let's call it, would be the digital projects implementation skills across different areas of supply chain. So obviously there's a lot of talk about industry 4.0. There's a lot of initiatives there, right? So you have from Internet of Things, you have robotics, automation, you have RPA, which is robotic processes, right? You have what else do you have? All sorts of other initiatives that basically make the different processes and systems within supply chain faster and easier, right? So anything around those lines would be crucial. I mean, I think by now everybody would have had some exposure to many different projects depending on how much time you spend in supply chain. It doesn't have to necessarily be super complicated. It doesn't have to be flying drones or I don't know what. When we were talking to a client that recently implemented and managed to implement across the organization, and they're running a global footprint retail organization, S&OP process and system that helped them tremendously in terms of making sense of data, making sense of their processes, better communication between sales, operations, supply chain, manufacturing. That can be an example of a very good project that had high impact. Ultimately, the goal of digital supply chain, digital transformation is not to create something fancy around blockchain or AI, machine learning or whatever. it is to have results, and it's to have results, tangible results inside the company. So the more of this type of projects you have under your belt, the more valuable you are to other organizations. Number three, in terms of what makes top talent, I would say is kind of broken down into two really, is international exposure and end-to-end experience across the different functions of supply chain. So international exposure is really, very simply put, working across different geographies, territories, ideally continents. I would say that if you strive to be in a global position in a multinational, it's almost imperious that you've worked at least in on two continents, and ideally one of them, and I know I'm biased, I do sit in Asia myself, but one of them should be Asia, just because of the sheer size and growth potential of the continent for many, many years to come, which are going to fuel the growth worldwide, really. Secondly, exposure to the different functions. What I mean by that is, if you can have a glimpse or different stints, or a management traineeship would be ideal if you're early starting your career, that touches upon the different facets of, and there's four key pillars really, right, in supply chain, by my definition at least, right? It is plan, procure, make, deliver. So if you manage to cut across these four somehow, or have different exposures to this, it gives you that full end-to-end understanding of what is supply chain, and I think that's extremely valuable, so that your broader understanding of the business. Also, you can get that, for example, we have a client right now that is going into a major data program, and the person that will lead that data program, and it's a master data alignment, they would pull the data from all the different business units across APAC. That person will end-to-end understand the business, right? Because it's the purpose of data across the different units, across the different functions. To put it into one system, you need to understand it. So you can also get exposure to that end-to-end, to those end-to-end functions, and really understanding the business. If you do such projects, it doesn't have to be that you have to spend 1 year or 2 years in each of the functions. But I think that overall business understanding is extremely crucial if you want to exceed, especially to a executive level position. Okay, so these were the three hard skills, but I'm going to move on, because sometimes the hard skills, to be honest, are almost taken for granted in certain positions, and especially the higher you go. Case in point, if you're going to become a chief supply chain officer, unlikely that the hard skills are going to determine whether or not you're going to get the job. It's always about the soft skills. So what are those three soft skills that we believe are the crucial ones that define a top talent? Number one, presentation and communication skills. So fairly straightforward. However, I do believe that a lot of professionals and executives within supply chain, logistics, transportation struggle with this. Fundamentally, it boils down to this simple question. Can you catch the attention of an audience, whether it's the board, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the senior leadership of the team, whether it's your boss, whether it's your clients, within 30 seconds? Can you do that? Because if you can, that to me means that you have this ability to have great presentation skills, great communication skills. If you don't, you have to work on it. Also, this ability is extremely, extremely important when it comes to transmitting a message simply to across the organization, right? Cascading it down. So we have a lot of organizations that have blue collar workers, right? Can you explain to them in a simple manner that they understand, and they can share own words, they can act and take action upon your speech? That is crucial, and I think it's a key element to that, and it boils down to radical simplicity. I will quote here, radical simplicity is actually from Ken Allen, who is the former CEO of DHL Express. He managed to orchestrate the biggest turnaround in the history of logistics, as far as I know it. DHL Express, when he took over, Ken took over in 2007, 2008, was losing 2 billion euros. When he left about a year ago, the company was making 2 billion euros. So it's an incredible transformation. And Ken is a big fan of this radical simplicity, sharing your ideas, communicating your ideas in a very simple way. One idea that I want to share from him, he actually used songs, because in order to distill a message that is so simple that can be transmitted through a song, one, music is something that everybody and all of us as human beings understand. And two, it forces you to really make your message very, very simple. You don't need 10 pages, you don't need 1 page, you just need one simple idea that can be transmitted through a song, and actually can have several songs for several themes that you wanted all the organization, from the couriers, right, the ones that were delivering the packages, the blue collar, to the senior executives in the team would understand and know well. So communication skills, presentation skills, number one. Number two, in terms of the soft skills that I do believe are highly necessary, is what I would call influencing engagement skills, right? So a stakeholder, different stakeholders in the organization. So this is upwards, sideways, downwards. This is inside the organization. This is external world. It's crucial because ultimately nobody cares about what you want. Nobody will help you get what you want within supply chain if they don't understand what they get out of that projects, right? So unless it's a win-win, it can be a fantastic idea. It can be very clear in your mind as a supply chain executive or professional that it will help the organization. But if the sales guys don't get it, they won't put the data in the system. Your S&OP will be skewed and it will be worthless, right? So it is crucial to know how to present. And again, it's kind of very linked to the presentation skills, right? How do you present something and influence somebody that you may or may not have authority over to come on your side and join you on that project? That's what I mean by influencing skills, as well as outside of the organization, right? How do you build partnerships? How do you build ecosystems? How do you build long-term relationships with, with both your vendors as well as your clients? That's a skill that is highly, highly valuable, and will only increase to be more and more valuable because it's ultimately about relationships, and business is about relationships. Number three, in terms of the soft skills, is change management skills. So, change is the only constant. I think we've all heard that. So now we're dealing with COVID-19. If it's not COVID-19, there's been other crises. There's going to be other crises. So I think crisis is actually the new normal. If we are looking for a new normal, I think we should just accept that we will be on a continuous crisis mode almost. Hence, we will forever need to change. But another reality of change is that none of us like it. We are human beings and we tend not to like change. So basically that ability to stand out as a leader and drive that change, get the troops, get the team behind you, get the management behind you, build upon the other two skills that I shared, presentation skills as well as influencing skills, to enable that change, to convince people to do what needs to be done. That's a critical skills. Like the saying goes, right? If you can't get people to rally behind you, then you're not a leader, you're just taking a walk. So it's very simply put that. I have many good examples, and this can be done, this changes. I think what we have experienced in the last years, and specifically with COVID, can be done at a small scale and then scaled up in organizations, right? We have many organizations that do that. So that's another way to make it easier, right? So we have one client that's set up in one manufacturing plant, a system to collect data, clean up data, and so on. Once they got results there, they went to the second plant and they showed them how they increased productivity, increased, reduced wasting materials, increased, P&L, and basically all of that convinced the next one to do it, and then they applied it at an organizational level. So that's one way to use change. We've had another client to do this change management well. We've had another client that they applied the principle of using your hardest enemies. Almost, it's not enemies, it's people that oppose your change. Take them, listen to them, go next to them, right? Again, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So listen to them, understand where they're coming from, answer their queries, and then they become your biggest advocates in the change management process, and then they further push this change inside their organizations and teams. So many different ways to do it, but the key thing here is, do you have this ability? And this is 1000% critical in today's world. So there you have it, the three soft skills. Again, presentation skills, communication skills, one. Number two is what we would call, or what I would call, stakeholder influencing and engagement skills. And number three would be change management skills. And finally, fundamentally, at the core of all of this, to be, for us at least, a top talent, you need to understand and admit that learning never stops, that we are never finished, that we constantly need to learn, constantly need to relearn, actually, unlearn and relearn, actually. and basically also accept the fact that we will never know it all. The moment we think that we know it all, we've lost. It's as simple as that. And basically, you know, there is a great saying also that if you think if you're the smartest person in the room, change the room because you're in the wrong room. It's also about making sure that you're surrounded by people that are smarter than you, that you can learn from, and that you can grow together. So it's not only about being a good leader, it's also about having a good leader actually as an attribute has a great team around them and keeps on learning. So I guess these were the 7 in total, right? 3 hard skills, 3 soft skills, and 1 fundamental that I wanted to share with you. I do believe that, you know, the technical skills may change here and there, but the soft skills and the fundamental of keep learning will be here to stay for the next 20 to 25 years or however long. And obviously on the specific topic of learning, attending conferences like this, or also I'm going to put a shameless plug that we do have the podcast Leaders in Supply Chain, Leaders in Tech and E-commerce. You might want to listen to that, but there's a lot of online. I think also what COVID-19 has moved learning even further online. So I would encourage everybody to explore that as a means to further continuously learn. And yeah, hopefully this was useful, relevant. Keep enjoying the summit, and it has been my pleasure sharing with you. Thank you.